This is Dylan from Manoa Chocolate, and today we're going to talk about scaling and when to scale and how we did it. There's so many different approaches that you can do. We're going to share our story and what has worked for us. And so the first thing that happened was, let's actually go all the way to the back. And I talked about this in one of our last episodes, give it away for free. And so when I was making chocolate at my parents' house, I'd do these 5-pound test batches and hand temper 40 bars, and I would just give it away. And what ended up happening is enough people started to know me as the chocolate guy and then started saying, hey, can I buy a few bars? My mom's birthday's coming up, or my brother's birthday. And then I started to be able to realize there was something here. There was a business opportunity here, and I liked the big picture of being able to grow cacao as a fruit tree in an agroforestry system and then make a really nice value-added product from that and being able to export it all over the world. So that's that feedback loop that keeps me going and makes me happy doing what I do. But I saw that there was enough demand or value to customers to try and attempt a chocolate company in the same way that craft beer had started. And so as people asked for more, it was the encouragement I needed to continue and take those next really big steps. And so the first place we rented was about 620 square feet on the second floor of a building with no elevator. There's a lot of challenges involved in this. There was no visibility. However, what's more important than visibility is foot traffic. And we are more of an impulse purchase than anything. And so who cares if lots of people see you as they drive, as your storefront as they drive by on a busy street? If no one's walking around, they're probably not going to come in, or at least not enough to keep you in business unless you're at a scale where you're wholesaling regularly. And we can talk about that later, but we had foot traffic from a restaurant, a breakfast restaurant that was very popular. And they would walk up the stairs and they'd say, wow, a chocolate factory. What do you guys actually do? You make truffles and bonbons? Like, what do you do here? And I'd say, no, we're making chocolate. And I'd show the little grinder. And at the time we had this little bicycle that we'd pedal and it would spin a cracking device. And there was a back massager that fed the beans down the tray, and a vacuum sucked the shells away. And so I was able to show all of this. And I realized that the experience was the invaluable part. And people appreciated the education and would then purchase a couple chocolate bars before going home. And then the next couple people would walk in. And so that was the start of Manoa Chocolate being able to successfully run a business. And there was a lot of learning involved in this because I didn't have experience with it, and a lot of growing pains. Because when you retail, it's really nice. You have your money back right away, and you can buy things right away and pay people right away. Whereas if you wholesale, you have to wait a long time. But we started with nothing. So you actually had to make enough money to buy bigger quantities of beans and sugar and milk powder. And so that was a huge challenge. But as you scale, you have to learn how to manage $100 before you manage $1,000, before you manage $10,000. And so it's just the foundation, and it doesn't really change as you get bigger. You just become more efficient and understand how that cash flow works. And so we got up to the point where there was maybe 5 employees over the next couple of years in this 640 square foot spot, and we were just packed in there. And we'd done a Kickstarter in between where we'd raised $19,000 and bought our first scaled up equipment. And when I started to see how much of my time I saved by having bigger equipment, it was a game changer. It was like everything clicked, and I realized, oh my God, my time is the most valuable thing. I can't be spending the hours loading an 8-pound grinder when I can load an 80-pound grinder or an 800-pound grinder. So this is the way that we're going to continue to scale even now. But that was a really valuable lesson to learn on a small scale, and it kept us alive at that point as soon as I started to grasp these concepts of scale. And it didn't mean that the chocolate got worse by doing it on a bigger scale. And in fact, it was the opposite. It got better. And so from 620 square feet, what happened is there was an adjacent suite, an adjacent room next to us that no one had rented for a couple of years. And so we started to need electricity, and so we tapped into the power in that panel, and we're utilizing the electricity from this other empty suite. But then it started to get shown and was going to get leased out. So I had to then tell the landlord, hey, we're actually getting the electric bill from that too, and we're currently using the power. I think we have to rent it. And they said, okay, well, yes, you do have to rent it. And we then were forced into expanding, which was a perfect time to do it. It was very scary because it was doubling our space. And at the time I did the math, and we had to sell another 12 bars a day at retail, which was terrifying at the time because there was still it was still so fragile as a company. It was like treading water all the time. But what happened is, as we knocked down walls and made it look like a contiguous space and added more windows and slightly larger equipment, all of a sudden the experience got so much better and people bought so much more. And so we didn't sell 12 more bars, we sold like 50 more bars a day. And things started to click for the first time financially, and it started to run as a business. And so from 5 people, we were able to expand up to 10 people, part-time people doing retail sales and a couple people doing production all the time. And so I started to learn how to run a business and start to work with managing people. And so so we went from 620 to about 1,300 square feet, 5 people to 10 people. And over the next couple of years from there, we started to outgrow that as well. And one of the biggest challenges is actually being on that second floor with no elevator. We had to figure out how to forklift things through windows, and beans are extremely heavy. They're 68 kilos a bag, so friends were not wanting to help me carry them up the stairs anymore. So we had to start breaking them down into smaller quantities and carry them upstairs. So this was just a lot of inefficiencies. And so what ended up happening is another space down the street on the ground floor opened up. I got a much larger loan of about $130,000 and rented a ground floor cave type of room that had 3-phase power. And we then bought lots of bigger equipment that helped us start to scale to hit distribution price points for the first time. So before it was just us retailing, which was the majority of our business. It was probably, at first it was 100% of our business, and then it became 90, and then 80, and then 70. And then we started to enter wholesaling more, and that helped our volumes a lot. But when we hit distribution with our equipment of like ball mills, 4-roll refiners, conches, continuous tempering machines that could deposit 5 bars or 10 bars at a time instead of 1, that helped lower all of the unit costs with the same amount of time. So once again, we bought our time back. My time wasn't needed loading 400 bars because in 1/10 the amount of time we could do 4,000. And so this started to really teach me a lot about logistics, because now all of a sudden we had this surplus. Our new bottleneck was sales. And so when we started to be able to sell over the next few years more than we could make, once again, we had to figure out how to grow from there. And so you're always dealing with a new bottleneck, whether it's in equipment, labor, or sales. It just never ends. And so you have to get used to that. And so now I've internalized that, and I'm totally fine with a bottleneck. It's not a problem anymore. It's just the next thing to focus on. So when we hit the phase where we had that 3,200 square feet, where we had the ground floor location, where we're starting to do distribution, the team had grown to about 15 people. So from 5 to 10 to 15, and I'm rounding off. It was either give or take 1 or 2 people. And then when we finally hit this last phase where we're currently at, we were around 25 people until this coronavirus incident happened. And we've cut back since, and we're waiting to hire everyone back once things start. But each phase adds 5 or 10 people, and there's no way we around it, because with the equipment I was always trying to not hire more people, because your labor costs are the greatest expense after something like rent. And so you don't want to have to hire more people, but as you scale, you have to do more sales. You have to have more education, or we have a tasting room. That's the biggest employer for us. And then after that, it would be the production side. And so as soon as we hit the point where we have 5,000 square feet, or approximately, we have about 25 employees. And that'll continue to keep growing. So I'm curious to see, as we hit our next factory and growth phase, how many more employees will need to be added. But this means we've hit the point where there's people managing people. And this is a really tricky thing to learn because it's not my strength, it is people management. I'd much rather be there making the chocolate or doing these videos and teaching everyone what we do. So I've now realized that I'm okay at most things, but there's other people who are better at production management, better at general management, better at forecasting, better at sales. And so I just do my best to make sure it's all happening as well as they can do it and give them what they need. And so that has become more my role, and just filling in wherever I need to in order to make sure everybody is doing the best job they can so we continue to make the best product we possibly can. And so from 600 square feet to about 1,300 square feet, we added another 850 square feet. And so now what are we at? We're around 3,000 square feet, 3,200 square feet, and ground floor and three-phase power. But we outgrew that as well. And so it always seems like the more space you have, you're just gonna fill it. Storage starts to become a real problem because what's so wonderful about buying in bulk is you get cheaper unit prices, cheaper shipping, but all of a sudden you have to put it somewhere. And so we had at first a closet that we just shoved full of boxes and packages. And then we had to rent an entire 400 or 500 square foot room. It's totally stuffed. And so this continues to happen to us as we get bigger, and one of the lessons we've learned is about half your factory or your plant should be just for storage of raw materials, beans, packaging, mainly packaging. And from that point, we were there for another 3 years in that approximately 3,200 square feet, counting the storage room that we'd rented. And then we wanted to consolidate everything because the inefficiencies of being upstairs here and a storage room here and another place down the street, we were just running all over the place. It was so inefficient labor-wise, having to do different steps of the process in different locations, where we'd roast upstairs, crack and winnow, run the nibs down to the next factory, run over to the storage room and get the boxes. And so now we wanted to consolidate. And so we'd hit this point where we found a spot that was about 5,000 square feet, and we now have everything in one location and offices, because we've been at this point working in a hallway that we converted into an office as well, where we would do all of our admin. And the bigger you get, the more administration needs to happen. Unavoidable has to happen. Financial statements, you have to have them to review. You have to start doing projections. All of these things, if you don't start doing them, you cannot successfully grow as a business. At least not as fast as you should. That's kind of how we've approached scale. It always was a necessity. You can feel it, like, oh my gosh, there is no more room, and we're doing well enough that we can't sell any more chocolate without having more space. Time to take another risk. And so that's entrepreneurship. You're running a business. You have to take that next risk and take that next step in order to see the next results. And so for me, every single place that we do is just a stepping stone for the next, because we want a very large factory. And to me, I think that a business is a very powerful tool to achieve or do whatever mission I might want. So in this case, social or environmental issues are important to me. And the business will be able to help in the next 15 years make a difference there. So that's what's driving me. In the meantime, we're focused on making the very best chocolate we can, or the very best chocolate macadamia nut spread we possibly can. And it's fun to make really good products. It's not that fun to mass produce and try and compete with craft foods. It's a lot more fun to make a really solid quality product in a relatively new industry that people love. Chocolate makes people happy. So there's a lot of wonderful parts about making chocolate. Those are some of the things that keep me going. And I hope this helps as other chocolate makers. I know there's hundreds and hundreds of small chocolate makers out there now. I hope these help, maybe even thousands, but you'll feel when it's time to take that next step, and you gotta go for it, especially if you have the demand there. So good luck, happy chocolate making, see you next time.